Good morning. Today I'm here with the Coffee Club as part of TEDx with Lesley Miller, the Senior Manager in Allstate. It's so lovely to meet you in person.
Thank you.
We've chatted on the phone, but you're really, really welcome here to Loaf Pottery in Crawfordsburn, and thank you very much for coming along and having a chat with me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Good. Well, so we've had a little bit of a conversation about your background and you know, one of the reasons why you were interested, or I was interested in having a conversation with you, Lesley, but maybe you could help give us a little bit of a background to the role that you're in now and the kind of your passion, I suppose, around diversity.
Happy to. And I've been working for quite a few decades, mostly in tech. But in the last couple of years, I sort of moved into a more business role. So I work in Allstate Northern Ireland, and I have overarching responsibility for business engagement, as well as some local leadership of our new finance function. So it's starting new areas of business, getting them used to global working, getting our global partners used to global working, where they haven't had before. But my day-to-day delivery role involves business engagement, so diversity and inclusion, and looking at how we connect within our organisation with our employee resource groups or ERGs, but also how we liaise with universities, schools, other businesses, government, and look at how we have a positive impact in the community and beyond.
Great, and Allstate have a very significant impact on the community and a very well-known business in Belfast. I suppose Derry, you have an office in Derry as well?
We do, and Strabane.
And Strabane, wow,
yes.
So that's really good. That's that link
yes.
Into the areas where, you know, there's maybe more economic deprivation and that community. So that's great to hear a little bit more about that. So when we were having a conversation, one of the things that would interested me was a little bit of about your family background. So you're from a big family.
I am. Yes, I am. And I think that's part of what makes you what you are.
Is
how you grew up. Yes, I am the middle child of 9 children,
wow.
which apparently tells you volumes. But also the eldest girl. So I have 4 elder brothers myself, 2 younger brothers and then 2 younger sisters. So you grow up very early on. There was no distinction, apart from the fact that I would have had to have washed an awful lot of rugby kit in my youth. There was no distinction made between boys and girls. The achievement levels were set. You were expected to perform, and in fact I was expected to perform higher in many instances, because my mother would have put that expectation on me.
Yeah.
But she would be in many ways a role model to me, because when she had 9 children, she then, when the youngest started school, she took a job, and then deciding that wasn't quite fulfilling enough, she decided to do a degree in speech and language therapy. So we both went to Jordanstown, as it was known as then, University of Ulster, and so I was probably the saddest student.
Oh, you were at the university at the same time?
We were, so I travelled with my mother.
Oh, fantastic.
But it was a great experience for both of us, and she then went off into the world of work and is now happily retired with lots and lots of grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
I get the feeling I might like your mum, that drive and determination to go back after having 9 kids and to start a second career.
Absolutely.
Is really amazing. And do you think that that's been something that's kind of carved out you know, can you, looking back on it now, do you think that upbringing in the bigger family has got you where you are today, or is part of that?
Oh, I think so. I think it has played a major part in informing my drive to work, you know, from a very young age, because you are in a large family, so, you know, money's not going to be growing on trees out in the back garden. So you had to go out and earn your own spending money as soon as you could. And then the drive was to get educated and work. And, you know, when I got married and had my children, it was never expected that I wouldn't work. It just made me and my husband plan and partner up and making sure that we could both do that and have fulfilling careers, and also ensure that our children were loved and supported and brought up to be the best they can be. And I think that's the self-fulfilling circle. You bring your own up to be like yourself.
So that makes you a really good role model then in Allstate when you start looking at diversity and
I hope so.
yeah, I get the feeling. One of the things that you said when we spoke before that I really liked, because it just reminded me of my mum as well. You said that your mum, if you were standing about doing nothing, your mum always said something to you, wasn't it?
Yes, I actually repeated this to her on Friday. You know, if you were standing about and you weren't actually participating in something we're doing, why are you standing there with your two arms the one length? So standing there, no, you know, why aren't you lifting something? Why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you reading something? And I think probably that's one of the things that I get most from my mother, is a love of books and literature as well.
Okay, great.
So that makes, and that is part of your own education, be it fact or fiction or newspaper or anything you like.
Brilliant.
Keep reading, keep educating yourself in one way or another.
Fantastic, and possibly a really good way of getting a bit of quiet time in a family with 9 kids.
In the bedlam, yes. I read from a very young age, and I'm still at the age of 59 able to tune everybody else out if I'm sitting reading.
That's a really good
I
skill.
won't hear anybody talking to me, and I think that's because I developed that at a young age.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So tell us, you know, your leadership journey to where you are now.
Yes.
And what do you know, tell us a little bit about how that's went when you're reflecting on it. Now,
Yes.
what's your learning?
My journey to leadership was in some ways, you could call it organic or you could call it accidental. You know, I just sort of made my way through, and I took all of the opportunities as they presented themselves.
Okay, that's an interesting point.
And I think the dynamics of work nowadays are such that people are always very keen and eager to see what the next step was. And I suppose in some ways, I don't believe I was lackadaisical, but I believe it was the culture at that time that you took the opportunities as you saw them. It was very much the opportunity came out and you would apply for it and go through the process.
So you waited to be asked, and maybe that's changing nowadays. Do you think so? You can see that?
Oh yes, absolutely. And I'm delighted that it has.
Okay.
As long as there is a degree of practicality around understanding how that works, because the thing about not being afraid to ask is that sometimes you set yourself up to not being afraid to expect, and then become slightly disappointed when it doesn't all land out the way that you believe you've foreseen it will happen. And I think that can make it more challenging for some of our young folk. I want to see all of those risks being taken. I want people to ask and get and be rewarded for that confidence and desire and drive. But I also want them to temper it with that every day is a learning, and just because you don't get this one does not mean to say you're a failure.
Okay.
It is something else to learn from.
Okay, and you think that that's something that you're helping the younger or the newer people into the organisation with? Can you tell me a little bit about grit and what your feeling is around that? The skills that people need, the coping mechanisms people need. We're hoping that a number of the people listening into this will be thinking about a new career or thinking about developing in their career, and I wonder what your feeling is around grit and leadership.
I think it's absolutely necessary to have grit, and I'll segue back in a minute because I'll talk a little bit about the diversity mark organisation that I'm engaged with. But the thing about it is, at your core, have tenacity. Yeah. Don't be afraid. Be brave. Because people can't read your mind and say, I know you want that thing and let me present it to you. And, I think everybody when they're younger, can they not see it in me? Yes, they do, but you have to actually be able to enunciate what that is. You have to be able to put words to it. And you have to do that to make yourself understand what that is. I think for young people, I believe I've always been approachable. I like being a mentor, and I think that's a very particular part to any young person coming out. Get somebody whose advice you can ask, but get somebody whose advice you can ask who is not afraid to challenge you.
Okay, yeah, so it's not somebody who just tells you everything's fine. You do need some positive criticism or feedback.
Yes, and
constructive feedback.
Absolutely constructive feedback. And the thing is, it's human nature. We all think we're practically perfect in every way. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody else still after all these years. And I believe it took me at least, 15, 20 years of working to be able to shine a more, shall we say, objective light on myself and my own behaviours, and understand that, maybe I wasn't absolutely perfect in every way and there are things to work on. And the thing about criticism is it may sting, and sometimes it really will sting, but go away and think about it. Somebody giving you feedback on constructive criticism is not doing it to make themselves feel good. They're doing it to help you. So you have to be able to think back on it and say, perhaps they had a point, and then swing back round with your mentor and take that feedback to them and say, how can I improve, or how can I address this, or what mechanisms can I use? Because it's about self-learning, but it's also about understanding ways and means to deal with, for instance, challenging people in challenging situations, because you need to have the ability to manage yourself through tough times, inside and outside of work.
Yeah, and that's that grit thing, I suppose.
Absolutely.
But you had mentioned, and it was good that we could maybe get back to the diversity mark as well. So it was one of the things that when we chatted you were really passionate about. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I'm really, really proud of it. And that, that comes from John, John Healy, the head of Allstate in Northern Ireland, who occasionally sends you an email going, please be introduced. And he please be introduced me to Roseanne Kelly from Women in Business.
Yes, I know Roseanne.
And this started way back in sort of May, I think, 2017. And it was getting a series of companies together to say, okay, we want to make Northern Ireland a more diverse place. We want to make our workforces balanced and diverse. When 51%, I think, of our population are female, and yet when I look at our organisation when we were going back, maybe 20% of the leaders were female. What can we do? And that's not criticism of Allstate. That is just endemic. I work in STEM.
Yes.
Allstate is primarily 90% plus technical, IT technical. So the STEM intake, for instance, in the last couple of years for females has been, it's maybe 28% overall, but that covers chemistry and all of the scientific and mathematicals. When you go to IT, it's maybe 18%. Wow. It's very hard, so your leadership pool is actually reflective of the IT population at large. But how do you make it more diverse? Because diversity in all its forms.
Because it's not just gender either. You told me about some of the other groups that you have working.
Yes, gender, LGBTQ plus age, ethnicity, disability. All of those things form and create a better workplace, because when you have diverse opinions, you get better ideas and better innovation. Forbes and others have said it's up to sort of 19-20% in your bottom line.
And when I'm speaking to you, you can tell that it's something that you feel personally very passionately about. It's
Absolutely.
Not just a role that you've fallen into, is it? This has been a career journey where you've ended, where you ended up now where you wanted to be.
Absolutely. And in fact, starting out and working with Women in Business and other companies such as Gilbert Ash and the Civil Service and Danske Bank and others in Queen's, to start out the launch of Diversity Mark Northern Ireland has actually led me into the role that I'm doing now, where I have that responsibility for engagement and working with others in the organisation. So actually, yes, it has made I'm in such a sweet spot now career-wise.
And you have a little award. You got a recent award. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about that. That's something I always think when you've got a success, you need to sing about it.
Well, true. Well, maybe not sing. But when we started out, it was launched in 2018, and we were able to get. And the rules are: you go for bronze, you have it for 2 years, then you can apply for silver, and then it'll be another. And you have to broaden. So we started out with gender.
Yeah.
And our bronze award was around intake.
Yeah.
What was our graduate intake? What was our leadership profile? And in fact, putting mentoring in place for or just under management level females. And actually that was a really positive thing to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not all about targets, it's about supporting mechanisms. So we were awarded bronze back in 2018, and then we were allowed to apply for silver this year. So we've broadened out into a couple of other categories. We're working in all branches of diversity, but the application goes for age and LGBTQ+ in this instance, and we were the first and are still the only company in Northern Ireland to have a silver diversity mark award.
That might be one of the only good news stories I've heard of in 2020, so well done. I suppose I just wanted to end with a little discussion about, you know, you've said you're in a really good career spot now. You're starting to think about the next phases for yourself, and I think when we're looking at the audience that might be listening into these TED Talks, there'll be some people starting their career and some people starting to think about how they change their career, you know, at retirement age. So have you any tips or advice or even some examples of what you're thinking through at the minute?
Yes, and in fact, one of the things that I have, and you know, Allstate's a wonderful employer. I cannot sing their praises high enough because it has allowed me to go into this role. But I've also been allowed to adapt to my own career, and this is where don't be afraid to ask, because you can get. So I now I have reduced hours. And I work 3 days, longer days, but I've reduced hours, so I have my grandson.
I'd say it's more hours you're doing now, maybe than less.
which was maybe bad on the knees, but it's great fun. But you know, as I say, I'm 59, so I have to start thinking, right, okay, where will I go from here? What do I want to think about? And obviously the grandchildren feature heavily, but it's what volunteering, but also what mentoring can I do? And I think that's very important for people who have massive levels of experience to not just go, much as I appreciate sitting for 6 months, I want to do something. So being a director in the Diversity Mark organisation, and I've just recently agreed along with another colleague and I know at least one other person from Danske Bank to be a mentor to bring new applicants to the process. So it really is, it's sharing and spreading that knowledge simply because it may help someone else, not because I want to feel good, but because I hope it will help someone else.
Well, I can't think of a better mentor. And I can't think of a better person to have a cup of coffee with. So thank you very much. It's been lovely meeting you in person, and I look forward to catching up again soon.
Brilliant, Maeve.
Thank you
very much.